Action Comics Annual 2021, issue 2021, however we say this now. So
I think it's the Action Comics 2021 Annual Issue 1.
it's just
I don't think you really need to say the issue 1,
nah.
but for if you're logging it, cataloging it, it would still be a 1.
Yes. So this is Philip Kennedy Johnson with Sia if I'm pronouncing that right, which I mean, very well might not be. This brings us back to the house.
Scott Godlewski on that as well on some of the pages.
Yeah. Is that the Phantom Zone stuff?
I assume so.
Yeah. So this is back to the future House of L stuff, but tying it into some of the Warworld stuff that's coming up as well. This idea that the framing device here is that whilst on Warworld there are supporters of Superman, but it's, you know, like you will be killed if you speak out in support of Superman, and this child's like carved out a little Superman toy for herself. And this old man, well, he's not even that old really, but this man is telling all the kids this story. We got a Superman story, so they all hush and they make sure they can't be heard. And he tells them a story. But I'm going to tell you a story about the past. I'm going to tell you a story about the future. So they even speculate at the end that the kid's like, "Hey, have you been to the future, Mister? Because you seem to know things." So obviously there's something brewing here with who this is, and you know.
Yeah, it's an interesting one in that you could wave it away as like, no, it's just a story, you know.
Yeah.
But
in a weird way as well, like because this stuff in the House of L is so far in the future, you could just sort of read it always as a possible future and not a guaranteed thing, because the comics eventually are going to go in another direction and just rule it out by
eventually,
nature by nature of writing. But so it's a story, and forgive me, this is one where I could use a cheat sheet for all these characters, but it's clear, it's easy to remember which one's which functionally when you're reading them. In that, it's very clear that the Nightwing looking one, and by Nightwing I just mean he's here. He's the Superman of Earth currently. In the
that's
context,
Brandon, I believe.
That's Brandon, yes. We have his younger daughter, he's training. She's got the sort of more ginger hair. You've got the Blue Lantern.
The Tamaranian, half Tamaranian, right?
You mean she?
She. Did I not say she?
I thought I said he. Yeah, it's weird for daughter.
I thought I said she, but
I'm sure I said it. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
But like, you've got the Blue Lantern, L member, who's the sister of. Is she the sister of Brandon or the sister of the one who's current Superman of Warworld?
Current Superman.
Right.
So, well, is it of Warworld? You might be right. Yeah. So it's
because Brandon's current Superman of Earth, which
Yes.
Yes.
And then you've got Rowan and Ronan.
Yeah.
So Rowan is her, the Blue Lantern, and Ronan is him, Superman of Warworld. I'll take your word for it. I
think that's what they said, something like that. So, yeah. Then you've got a Bry, or whatever they're calling the Brainiac one, is with them.
Yeah, and then you've got Allura, who is the one getting married.
The one getting married, yes. And then you've got Kara, of course, who we do know, Superwoman, who is officiating this wedding. And Allura is marrying someone from Warworld, who is taking the crest, and as we learn later, is going to take the name. He's going to take the L name.
Yeah.
And so, because of traditions on his side, I think they said, he has to challenge a member in combat from the L family as part of the wedding. Friendly combat, it's not to the death or anything. They're kind of joking about who gets to do it. And that's when the dodgy child, Peros, yes. And the all red. It's kind of like a red samurai thing he's got. The sort of the dressing around coming from his belt.
I can see that, the headband.
Yeah. So he's kind of the villainous son of Superman who's around. And Kara's like, oh, not this shit head again. So basically the story here. So we've run down the characters because it's important to have at least some kind of a grasp on all these characters. And they're all likable. I wasn't as hot on that previous Future State issue that introduced these characters.
That me and Matt loved.
Because it went into the King Arthur stuff. And the more you talked about that, the less interested I got, because I was like, well, I didn't get as much out of this, and it just, like, all you're doing is making it more confusing for me because I don't know that story that well. This on its own, I enjoyed more. Basically, he ends up trapping most of the family in the Phantom Zone. Everyone but Kara, basically, gets sent to the Phantom Zone. He adds some new lore to the Phantom Zone. At least it's new to me, as far as I can tell. and it's it's because the problem with that original story for me was never the characters. The characters all seemed likable enough. It was just once it got to Peros and like the stuff around him and like was where it got a little bit more convoluted. But the rest of them and their banter and the way they interacted with each other made me kind of like this future Superman family, which is impressive because normally when I get like a high concept thing like that, it's usually really hard to make me give a shit about all these like nobodies that you've introduced.
It's interesting because this is earlier in the timeline than what we got in that Future State issue.
Yes.
They're all younger here. Because like Khan was definitely Khan-El in that issue for a start.
Yes.
So those things that obviously takes place later. I would not be opposed to getting like a mini series of these, or maybe the backup in action at some point could be these guys.
I can see either of those things. I can also see Superman somehow traveling to the future in storyline, and it just being an arc of the main book in action.
Yeah,
because there's so much there's so much stuff setting these guys up that there's something coming from them, and I like them all. I like them all a lot more after this issue. I'm happy to say.
That was it. Like one appearance in Future State, and you go, oh, okay, it could be just they needed an issue, right?
Because I did roll my eyes a little bit when I saw it with the annual was going to be them. I was like, I wasn't as into that, but it's actually quite good. So
it is. It's real good.
So basically, it turns out the Phantom Zone, which obviously Jor-El discovered but didn't create, which is a really key point to bring up here, is actually the mind of like a higher being, effectively
a godlike being called Atha.
And basically, the Phantom Zone, as it was when Atha was asleep, and when it woke up, all of the Kryptonians who were here all turned into these weird, more monstrous beings, and it's like, oh shit! So they have to fight their way through that. And who do they run into? Who's like, because we always have these stories in the Phantom Zone, and we get it in other stories with like post-apocalypses where there'll be the one character who's kind of not usually on their side, but turns out to be the one character who's there who can help them. Cyborg Superman, Hank Henshaw, shows up and has like his poncho or whatever he's wearing.
Old man Cyborg Superman.
Yeah, old man Cyborg Superman is like, hey, we've got one chance, and he leads them on a journey, and we see them fighting a bunch of stuff. What's kind of neat about this, I like the 2-page layout where it cuts back to the guy telling the story, because the layout of that I thought was quite neat. It flowed really well in this sort of semicircle kind of design. But he's saying, there's a device, because there's no Phantom Zone projectors, they were all destroyed intentionally, but there is one device that might still be usable that was here, someone had it here. And I kind of, I'm kind of annoyed at myself for not guessing it was going to be a mother box, and
Same.
We get a mother box being held by a Mr. Miracle, which Mr. Miracle is open for debate, but he's just a skeleton with the outfit on, basically. And it's like,
yeah,
okay,
I'd guess I'd have said it was Scott. It looks like his outfit.
Yeah, it does.
The closest to, and obviously, mother boxes aren't exclusive to him, but they're intrinsically tied to him more than any others.
Yeah, but the idea is that this godlike being was waking up and is targeting whoever's arrived in its brain, effectively. Yeah. And there's some fighting going on, but ultimately use the mother box. They all come flying out of the portal. Sorry, why am I saying portal? Boom chip. I should just call it what it is. Boom chip.
I think it's because they use the word portal.
Yeah. And of course they fight. Peros, and big action scene very quickly, and they actually let Hank Henshaw go. Kara's ready to bring him in, and Brendan's like, hey, he did actually. I mean, true, he was just using it as a means to an end. He would happily betray us, but we would probably all be in there or dead if it wasn't for him.
And the point raised that he was never intended, presumably, to be a punishment for this long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's kind of he's served his time almost. It's like you get another chance now.
So they let him fly off. Well, because one of the mechanic things as well is that once they're in the Phantom Zone, once they deplete whatever energy they have from the yellow sun, it's gone. They don't get to recharge in the Phantom Zone, so they have to. If anything, a critique would be that they should have maybe played with that more. The more they were in there.
I think it's again we spoke before. Johnson loves like fantasy books. He has that. He had that Black Label one.
Mm-hmm.
There's that point where it is that 2-page layout where it's like going through the various adventures, and it's just like a panel for each thing. I can see an entire miniseries of this issue, basically, of just those pages. Each of those adventures is an issue on its own. And then getting weaker and weaker as they go through the series. Like you could have played that if you'd wanted to.
Yeah. I don't know if I would have liked that as much. I think I kind of like that he just kind of waves
I get it.
And glosses over it and says, "Hey, they went on some adventures." Yeah. So they have the wedding, they kiss. That's the end of the issue, pretty much. Other than, of course, the bookend with the kid again and sort of question, "Hey, you're from the future?" Because you seem to, because that's the thing. They show that in this House of Krypton, House of L, whatever it is, in the future, this toy that this girl made is there in a case, and it's like, this is from a time when Superman was at his lowest and someone believed in him, and which ticks all these Superman boxes for us. I think as Superman fans is the idea, the inspiration of Superman and the belief of Superman and all that. But he's like, is my toy really going to be in the future? And it's like, yeah, like if this guy was making up a story, which it didn't sound like he was, as she says, he sounds like he's telling something he knows about. But if he was making up a story, he would throw her thing in there. Like that would be like a little thing you'd put in for the kid.
It is.
So,
and maybe it's a little column A, little column B. Like maybe it's real, but it's still a story for the kids as well at the same time. So just kind of embellishing a few details here or there.
It does feel like he's and that's the other thing that they mention, that this kid, they're Thalosian, right, or whatever the pronunciation was, which was set up in the last Action issue. This is like the people that are going to be saved on Warworld. So the idea that's
what Carnell is as well.
Yeah. So the idea that this is an entire race of people on Warworld that Superman's going to eventually save, but there's like some trials and tributes. So I love the idea that's what Action is going to be. Whilst we're going to have Superman with
It's
John.
why when in the solicits they talk about this Warworld saga being the biggest story for Superman since Death and Return. Maybe they're not bullshitting us on that one, because it does feel pretty epic.
It feels big, and it feels like this is Superman saving a subset of like Kryptonians who survived in some way. He's saving, he's freeing his people. And there's already a lot of religious analogies with Superman and Moses and all the rest of it. So there's a lot of things to go in there that's baked into Superman as a core idea, but at the core of it's also just a really cool, big, epic sci-fi story of him saving people and all the rest of it. So, it's all those things. So, yes, hard to fault.
This is a really great issue.
Hard to fault it too much. So yeah, we give it.
No, I'll give it a 9. I love this issue.
It was I'll go 8.5. I think I'm just a tinge under where you are, but I'm definitely growing more fond of these characters that he's starting to build up. And next time maybe I'll remember at least their relationships to each other, if not their names.
I believe we have some Matt thoughts on this issue.
Action Annual, this is what he said. What I wanted from his House of Hell character family. Action Annual, what I wanted from his grammar here is a bit off, I'm not going to lie. He's missing a word or two. Basically saying this is what he wanted from his House of Hell character family. PKJ, is that the acronym?
K. Johnson, yeah.
Well, I know who it is, but I'm just saying, are we going to, is that what we call him now? PKJ, just for short.
Sure.
Does some great work building out the characters throughout the exposition, and while also making it feel like nothing is set in stone. The art is fine, but really comes around with Godlewski shows up. I don't know if I think I'm the other way around, actually. I think I prefer the other art, to be honest, but
I really like both. So I think the Phantom Zone stuff is inherently slightly less enjoyable to me because they're all in that bluey tint.
Yeah.
Makes them feel very separate from the background, which is intentional, so the art is not failing. Just it's not as pleasing on the eye as some of the other stuff.
Yeah. So, and then he says, I really love the dynamic between the family and how much Warworld mythos is coming out here.